American dream of home ownership. It's being felt here in Sacramento, too, where new data shows new listings down 35% from last year. Now, around the country, a growing number of would-be buyers are on.
Gavin Newsom's tense expression flashes across the screen as Sacramento housing data behind him nosedives, red arrows, plunging charts, and headlines screaming, "Market freeze deepens." California's capital city, once the promised land for Bay Area escapees chasing space and affordability, is now the epicenter of a housing market meltdown. Prices are stalling, listings are vanishing, and deals that once sparked bidding wars are collapsing overnight. How did Sacramento, the city that boomed with post-pandemic migration, end up frozen solid in 2025? On camera, the face of Governor Gavin Newsom tightens as the numbers flash behind him. Red arrows, plunging charts, and a grim headline: Sacramento housing market Freefalls. The tone in his voice cracks just enough to reveal frustration. For months, he's watched the warning signs pile up: slowing sales, frozen listings, and an affordability crisis that's reached even California's capital city. Now it's no longer just a housing problem, it's a political one. Sacramento's housing market has entered 2025 in deep trouble. The number of homes being sold has dropped sharply, echoing the pattern across the entire state. But here in the capital, the pain feels sharper. The median price of a home still sits between $570,000 and $600,000, but that's cold comfort when you look at what it costs to actually buy one. With mortgage rates soaring past 6.5%, affordability has collapsed. A home that seemed barely within reach a few years ago now feels impossible. Sellers aren't listing, buyers aren't buying, and the market feels frozen in place. Governor Newsom finally snapped in front of reporters earlier this month, calling the situation unsustainable. His outburst quickly made headlines across California. Some say it was anger, others call it frustration, the kind that comes from watching years of housing policies crumble before his eyes. Sacramento was supposed to be one of the state's more affordable regions, especially compared to San Francisco or Los Angeles. But that's no longer true. What used to be a refuge for Bay Area workers is now just another expensive, stagnant market. Realtors describe it in one word: stalemate. Sellers don't want to sell and buyers can't afford to buy. It's not about lack of interest, it's about the math not adding up. Everyone's stuck, waiting for someone else to move first. A big reason for this gridlock is something called the mortgage lock-in effect, and it's completely paralyzing mobility. During the pandemic, when the Federal Reserve slashed interest rates to near zero, homeowners across California refinanced at rock-bottom rates, many locked in mortgages below 3%. Fast forward to 2025, and mortgage rates now sit above 6 point. That difference doesn't sound huge, but it's crushing. If a homeowner in Sacramento decided to sell their house today and buy another, their monthly mortgage could jump by $600 to $700. That's like taking on an extra car payment every month just for the privilege of moving. Real estate agents across the city say the same thing. It's not that people don't want to sell, it's that they can't afford to. The Federal Housing Finance Agency backs that up, confirming that Sacramento ranks among the top cities in California for this monthly cost penalty. Homeowners are, in essence, trapped in golden handcuffs. They've got low mortgage rates and low property taxes, perks they'd lose the moment they move. So even if they want a bigger home, a shorter commute, or a change of scenery, it makes zero financial sense to make a move. And that's only half the problem. The other half lies in a decades-old law called Proposition 13, passed back in 1978. On the surface, Prop 13 was meant to protect homeowners from skyrocketing property taxes. But decades later, it's one of the main reasons California's housing market feels frozen. Here's how it works. Property taxes are tied to the original purchase price of a home, and annual increases are capped at a very small percentage. That means someone who bought their home in 1995 is paying taxes based on that old value, not the current market price. In some cases, that can mean paying less than half of what a new buyer would owe for the same house next door. So when that longtime homeowner sells, their tax base resets. Suddenly, their annual property tax bill doubles or even triples. Combine that with higher mortgage rates, and moving becomes financially irrational. Economists call this the double lock-in effect. You're trapped by both your cheap old mortgage and your low old property tax rate. Together, those two factors have frozen Sacramento's housing supply. Even when people manage to break free of those traps and decide to sell, another crisis hits: insurance. It's become the new silent killer of California real estate deals. In Northern California, insurance companies have been quietly pulling out of high-risk areas because of wildfires, floods, and the rising costs of climate change. Sacramento sits right between both, surrounded by foothill fire corridors on one side and floodplains on the other. That means insurers see the area as risky, and they've either hiked premiums to outrageous levels or stopped writing new policies altogether. Buyers who finally find a home they can afford suddenly discover that their insurance quote adds hundreds more to their monthly bill. In some cases, lenders won't even close on the loan unless proof of insurance is secured. Without that, the deal collapses. Realtors in Sacramento say they've seen a spike in last-minute cancellations. Families who were ready to move in suddenly walking away because their insurance was either too expensive or unavailable. Those failed closings only make sellers more hesitant to list their homes in the first place. Why risk it if the deal might fall apart at the finish line? And so the cycle deepens. Sacramento's market has turned into a loop of hesitation and fear. Owners stay put because they can't afford to move. Buyers hold back because the total monthly cost of mortgage, taxes, insurance is simply too high. Sellers who do try to move forward end up withdrawing their listings when deals fall apart. It's like the entire housing system is stuck in molasses, slow, sticky, and impossible to get moving again. The irony is that demand hasn't disappeared, it's just bottled up. Thousands of families want to buy homes, thousands of others want to sell, but the financial system that connects them, interest rates, taxes, insurance, has jammed. Sacramento's housing market, once fueled by a surge of Bay Area transplants during the pandemic, now feels eerily quiet. Open houses that used to attract lines around the block are half empty. The bidding wars that once drove prices into the stratosphere have vanished. Governor Newsom's frustration makes sense. Sacramento isn't just any California city. It's the capital, the heart of the state's housing debate. If the market is freezing here, it's a sign of how deep the problem runs. During his press conference, Newsom lashed out at what he called decades of bad policy and local obstruction. He pointed fingers at slow permitting, outdated tax laws, and local zoning rules that make it nearly impossible to build new housing quickly. His anger might have been real, but so is the pressure. Voters are fed up. For them, homeownership feels like a fantasy, and renting isn't much better. At the street level, the frustration is palpable. Young families are being priced out, longtime residents feel trapped, and renters are watching their monthly payments rise because fewer people are buying homes. The squeeze hits everyone. Sacramento's realtors say they've never seen so many would-be buyers give up before even starting the process. One agent said, "It's not a housing crash, it's a housing freeze." And that's exactly what it is. Prices haven't collapsed, but activity has. For Sacramento, and really for all of California, The housing market in 2025 isn't defined by falling prices. It's defined by paralysis. Homes aren't selling because nobody wants to lose what they already have. And that's the dangerous part. Without movement, without liquidity, the housing system grinds to a halt. Jobs tied to real estate suffer. Tax revenues shrink. Construction slows. It's an invisible crisis that spreads through the economy, one frozen listing at a time. It was one of those rare political moments that didn't feel scripted. Cameras rolled as Governor Gavin Newsom stood before reporters in Sacramento, his tone sharper than usual, his frustration impossible to hide. Behind him, a screen displayed housing data, plunging sales, frozen listings, and grim headlines about the capital's housing market. When he slammed the table and called California's situation the result of decades of bad policy and local obstruction, you could sense he'd had enough. The Sacramento housing market, his own backyard, had gone from a symbol of opportunity to a political embarrassment. Just a few years ago, it was a completely different story. Between 2020 and 2022, Sacramento was booming. It became one of the biggest pandemic-era success stories in the entire state. When remote work took off, thousands of Bay Area residents fled the sky-high prices of San Francisco and Silicon Valley. They traded cramped apartments for suburban houses with yards, pools, and offices. Sacramento became their new home base, close enough to the Bay for occasional commutes, but far enough to feel affordable. Home prices surged. Realtors couldn't keep up with bidding wars, and it felt like the city had finally found its moment in the spotlight. But now that wave has reversed, and the crash back to reality has been rough. Those same remote workers who once drove up prices are leaving again. Many tech companies have called their employees back to the office, at least part-time. Others simply lost their jobs as the wave of tech layoffs swept across California. What's left behind is a market struggling to find its footing. Sacramento, once the poster child of pandemic migration, is now caught in a painful slowdown. Job growth in the region has cooled significantly, especially in the tech and service sectors. Rising costs have made the city far less affordable than it used to be. Inflation has chipped away at everyone's purchasing power, and even middle-class families who could afford a home 3 years ago now find themselves priced out. Economists have a name for what's happening: affordability fatigue. It's not just about prices being high, it's about people being emotionally and financially exhausted from trying to keep up. Sales numbers tell the story clearly. In Sacramento County, home sales are down more than 20% year over year, mirroring declines across California. New listings have also plummeted by double digits, following the same trend seen in San Francisco, where they're down roughly 17%. The result? Empty open houses, few offers, and no bidding wars. Realtors say it's the quietest they've seen the market in years. One local agent described it perfectly. It's not a crash. It's like the market's stuck in molasses. And that's exactly what it feels like. Slow, sticky, and frustrating for everyone involved. Prices haven't fallen dramatically because there's still so little supply, but the demand has completely evaporated. You've got a market that's frozen in place, not collapsing, but not moving either. Governor Newsom knows how dangerous that is, not just economically, but politically. Sacramento isn't just any city, it's the capital of California. When the housing market in his own backyard starts falling apart, it becomes personal. During his press briefing, his irritation wasn't just about numbers, it was about perception. California has long struggled with housing affordability, and for years, Newsom has promised to fix it. Yet here was Sacramento, a city he knows well, becoming another example of how deep the state's housing problems run. In his speech, Newsom didn't hold back. He blamed decades of bad housing policy and local obstruction, a reference to the countless zoning restrictions, permit delays, and neighborhood opposition that have slowed housing construction for years. He demanded emergency reforms, faster permitting processes, new incentives for affordable housing, and urgent steps to stabilize California's crumbling insurance market. "We can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results," he said, visibly angry. But critics were quick to respond, accusing him of reacting too late. They argue that Newsom has had years to address these issues, to reform housing laws, streamline construction, and confront local resistance. Instead, they say he's been too cautious, letting California's housing crisis spiral out of control. And now that it's hitting Sacramento hard, the political pressure has reached a boiling point. Still, his emotional response reflects something deeper, a frustration that millions of Californians share. People across the state are feeling trapped. Homeowners don't want to sell because they'd lose their low mortgage rates and face higher property taxes under Proposition 13. Renters can't buy because prices and interest rates are both sky high. Young families are giving up on home ownership altogether. The entire system feels like it's working against the average person. In Sacramento, the situation is especially ironic. The city was supposed to be the affordable alternative, the escape hatch from the Bay Area's chaos. For years, its relative affordability attracted teachers, nurses, tech workers, and state employees. But now even that safety net is gone. The cost of living has surged, grocery and gas prices are up, and mortgage payments have become unbearable for most new buyers. Inflation has quietly eaten away at every paycheck, and the dream of buying a home feels more distant than ever. Realtors say the energy that once defined Sacramento's housing scene has completely disappeared. During the boom, open houses were packed, and bidding wars drove prices tens of thousands of dollars over asking. Now homes sit on the market for months with barely a showing. "There's just no urgency anymore," one broker said. "Buyers are scared, sellers are stubborn, and nobody's moving." And that's really the heart of the problem, a market frozen by fear and fatigue. It's not that people don't want homes, they just can't make the numbers work. Between high interest rates, inflated prices, and stagnant wages, there's no easy way out. Sacramento's housing market has become a reflection of California's larger crisis, one where the dream of owning a home is slipping further out of reach for the middle class. Governor Newsom's reaction might have been emotional, but in a way it was also honest. He's facing the reality that the state's housing problem isn't just a matter of policy. It's a structural, generational challenge. Fixing it won't happen overnight. It means rethinking decades of laws, tackling insurance instability, reforming property tax rules, and finally building enough homes for the people who actually live here. But time is running out. Every month, more Californians give up and move out. Not just from San Francisco or Los Angeles, but now from Sacramento too. And when the capital of the world's fifth largest economy starts losing its residents, that's a sign that something has gone deeply wrong. The moment was tense and totally unplanned. Cameras were rolling as Governor Gavin Newsom stood at the podium in Sacramento, visibly frustrated, his tone sharper than usual. Behind him flashed a grim series of charts, plunging home sales, stagnant prices, and record low listings. After a long pause, he slammed his hand on the podium and declared, "This is unsustainable." For a brief second, the carefully composed politician let his guard down, and what we saw was pure exasperation. The Sacramento housing market wasn't just cooling, it was freezing over. And for Newsom, it was happening in his own backyard. To understand why California's governor lost it, you have to understand what's happening in Sacramento, a city that was once the poster child for affordable living. Just a few years ago, during the pandemic boom, Sacramento was flooded with new residents. Thousands of people from the Bay Area, tech workers, families, remote employees, moved inland, chasing cheaper homes and more space. Prices soared. Builders rushed to keep up. It felt like a new chapter for California's capital city. But now the script has flipped. The boom is over and the market has hit a wall. The wave of out-of-town buyers has slowed to a trickle, and the once bustling open houses are eerily quiet. Sacramento's housing market has entered a deep freeze, not collapsing in a fiery crash, but slowly locking up like a system running out of oxygen. Home sales have dropped sharply. Inventory is at record lows. Prices haven't crashed dramatically, but they've stopped rising, and no one's moving. The city feels stuck. At the heart of this freeze lies a brutal reality. Average families are being completely locked out. Sacramento's housing market, once accessible to middle-income households, now caters almost entirely to high-income professionals and cash-rich investors. The only people buying homes these days are dual-income couples, often in tech or healthcare, or investors betting on long-term value. Everyone else? They've been priced out. The dream of owning a home, especially for first-time buyers, is slipping away faster than ever. Realtors describe the new normal with a sense of disbelief. It's like the market's been divided into two Californias, one said. The rich are still playing the game and everyone else is watching from the sidelines. The numbers back it up. While overall home sales in Sacramento County are down more than 20% from last year, luxury properties, those above $1 million, are holding steady. It's a clear sign that the housing market has turned into a playground for the wealthy. And when people can't buy, they rent. That's led to a surge in rental demand across Sacramento. Apartments that used to sit empty are now snatched up within days. Rents have risen 8 to 10% in the past year, pushing monthly payments to record highs. For many would-be buyers, renting has become the only option, but it's far from cheap. Families who once dreamed of saving for a down payment now find themselves spending most of their income just keeping a roof over their heads. The irony here is painful. Sacramento was supposed to be the affordable alternative, the place where middle-class families could build a life. But in 2025, that dream feels almost nostalgic. The combination of high mortgage rates, low inventory, and soaring insurance costs has made homeownership feel like a privilege reserved for the few. Governor Newsom's anger wasn't just about numbers. It was about what those numbers represent. A system that's leaving ordinary Californians behind. Economists say Sacramento's housing freeze isn't just a temporary slowdown. It's a structural problem baked into the state's policies. Years of well-intentioned but conflicting rules have created a housing ecosystem that rewards staying put and punishes mobility. It's like California accidentally built a system designed to trap people where they are. Let's break that down. First, the low interest rates of 2020 and 2021 encourage millions of homeowners to refinance their mortgages at historically low rates, often below 3%. At the time, it seemed smart, but when interest rates shot past 6.5%, those low-rate loans became golden handcuffs. Anyone who sells their home now would have to take on a new mortgage with double the rate, translating to hundreds more in monthly payments. Then there's Proposition 13, California's famous property tax law from 1978. It keeps property taxes low for long-term homeowners by capping annual increases and basing taxes on the original purchase price. While it protects people from sudden spikes, it also discourages moving. If a homeowner sells and buys a new house, their tax base rises, often doubling or tripling their yearly bill. The result? People stay put for decades and the supply of homes for sale keeps shrinking. Add in the state's tight regulations and insurance chaos and you've got a recipe for paralysis. In many areas around Sacramento, wildfire and flood risks have made home insurance difficult and expensive to get. Some major insurers have pulled out entirely, forcing buyers into costly state-run programs. Deals fall apart because lenders won't approve a mortgage without proof of coverage. Even those who want to buy or sell are finding the process nearly impossible to navigate. It's no wonder economists describe California's housing market as a system frozen in place. The incentives are all wrong. The system rewards homeowners for never moving, keeping their low mortgage rates, low property taxes, and old insurance policies, while punishing anyone who tries to make a change. It's like financial glue, holding everyone in place and suffocating market movement. The long-term consequences of this are serious. Experts warn that this kind of immobility could trap an entire generation of homeowners and renters alike. Without movement, there's less opportunity for young families to buy their first homes. That limits wealth building, depresses consumer spending, and ultimately slows the entire state's economic growth. California's economy, which depends heavily on construction, real estate, and services, risks stagnation if this pattern continues. Governor Newsom's outburst then wasn't just political theater. It was a reflection of growing frustration across the state. For years, Californians have been told that relief is coming, that new housing construction, zoning reforms, and tax adjustments will make things better. But for the average person, nothing feels better. Homes are still unaffordable. Rents keep rising, and now even the state capitol is buckling under the pressure. For Newsom, this is more than just bad optics. It's personal. Sacramento isn't some faraway district, it's the city where he governs. Watching it crumble under the weight of the housing crisis must feel like a personal failure. His call for emergency reforms, faster permitting, new housing incentives, and insurance market stabilization is an acknowledgement that something has to give. But critics argue it's too little, too late. Meanwhile, Sacramento's residents are stuck in limbo. Some homeowners are clinging to their low-rate mortgages like lifelines. Others are watching their kids move out of state because they'll never be able to afford a home here. And renters, well, they're bracing for yet another rent hike. It's a cycle that feels impossible to escape. So when Governor Newsom loses it on camera, maybe he's not just angry, maybe he's scared that Sacramento's crisis is a preview of what's to come for the rest of California. Scared that the American dream, or the California dream, as it's often called, is slipping further away with each passing month. Because if even the capital city with all its government jobs and stable economy can't sustain a healthy housing market, what chance does anywhere else have?